Good morning.
Morning.
Morning. Welcome to the Dauphin Island Sea Lab Estuarium and to our Boardwalk Talks program. My name is Mendel Graver. I'm one of the educators here at the lab, and this is Dr. John Dindo, who has researched pelicans in this area extensively, and he is going to chat with us this morning about pelicans and about his research on a man-made dredge spoil island in the middle of Mobile Bay that has significantly contributed to the recovery of brown pelicans after their population decline in the middle of the 20th century. And he may tell us some other things about pelicans as well. So
Absolutely.
with that, I am going to let Dr. Dindo get started.
And just so you all know, especially you high school students here, this was my high school student a number of years ago. Really proud of her. Well, thank you all for coming. I'm a research scientist here. I've been here 43 years. I just retired 30 days ago. Mainly from administrative duties. I still have 2 grants. I'm working on lots of different birds in this area, and I work on fish. Do a lot of tagging, sharks, red snapper, and triple tail. So I've got a lot of activity research-wise, but I don't have any responsibility of telling people where they need to be and when they have to be there, which is really nice. So today I'm going to talk about Pelecanus occidentalis, the brown pelican. All of you have seen the brown pelican around here. You can't go anywhere here in South Alabama without seeing the brown pelican. But if you were here in the 1960s, late 60s, 70s, early 80s, you would have never seen a brown pelican. It'd be a rare event in the middle of the summer if you saw a brown pelican. And the reason for that is because of a chemical that we used in agriculture. It affected brown pelicans, it affected osprey, which is the American fish hawk, and it affected bald eagles. The chemical was made by Monsanto as an insecticide, and it worked great as an insecticide in agricultural fields. The problem with it was scientists didn't follow through the pathway of that chemical and how, after it left the fields, what happened to it when it slipped into the soils, got picked up by the aquifers or the rivers or the streams, and then what happened? Well, it breaks down. It broke down into a chemical known as DDE. And in the bodies of these birds, in females have what's called an eggshell gland. And that gland mobilizes calcium from the bones, from their long bones of their wings, their bones of their legs, their bones of the spine. That calcium is used to make the eggs. DDE interfered with the eggshell gland. And so either the eggs produced had a very, very thin shell or no shell at all. And so it doesn't take very many years to go by in which if there's no eggs, there's no chicks, and the population crashes. And so for the osprey, the bald eagle, and the brown pelican, that was the fate of the bird, 60s, 70s, and into the early 80s. Well, in 1983 and 84, the Army Corps of Engineers, which is a branch of the government that does a lot of construction, and they do, in our area, one of their biggest responsibilities is creating and keeping open the shipping channel. Mobile is an international seaport. It's the 7th largest seaport in the United States. From the deep water, which is just past the lighthouse, to the docks is about 38 miles. It's one of the shortest distance from deep water to the docks. So they have to keep that channel, which is 45 feet deep, they have to keep it open. Well, in '82, they decided there was another river in right up there by the city called Deer River. And it became an industrial site that needed access to the main shipping channel. So the Corps of Engineers created the channel called the Theodore Industrial Canal. And it's a channel 45 feet deep, 100 feet wide, that came off the main channel and went to the west back into this industrial site. But they had to have a place. When you dig a channel, you got to have a place to put the sediment. Mobile Bay, whether you probably don't realize this, Mobile Bay is a shallow estuary. The average depth is 14 feet. So you can't just take sediment and just throw it out and then shallow up the bay even more. And so you have to have an avenue to take care of it. So they created this island called Gilliard Island. And the island's very unique. This leg and this leg is 2 miles long. That leg is 1 mile long. Now I took this photograph a year and a half ago. I fly a lot, so I take a lot of aerial photographs. So that was about 2.5 years ago. They were back there this October, and they've rearranged the size of the island's the same, but all of this vegetation has been knocked down around the edges. The berm's built up. So this berm around the island is 35 feet high now. Okay. Well, in 1984, a pair of brown pelicans nested on Gilliard Island. Now this is a working Corps of Engineers island. And in '84, the brown pelican was listed as an endangered species. Well, the contractors are not scientists. The guys operating bulldozers are not scientists. They have no clue from a brown pelican to a laughing gull, of which were out there also. They have no idea. In '85, 4 nests, 4 pairs, right where they needed to bulldoze dirt. So what did they do? They bulldozed dirt. Mowed the nest, pushed them out of the way. Laughing gulls were nesting all around. I've got a photograph of a bulldozer operator out there, and there must have been 25 laughing gulls around the top of the bulldozer. And when I stopped him and asked him what, he said, "I can't figure out why all these birds are around me." Well, because you just mowed through their nest. Well, it was an interesting dilemma that we had, because pelicans and endangered species fall under the U.S. Fish and Wildlife, a government agency. The Army Corps of Engineers, an engineering group, falls under the government also. So the best thing I could do was put those 2 agencies together and let them decide how they were going to do this. The first thing that the Fish and Wildlife did was they sent an armed officer to the island and escorted the bulldozer operators off the island. That got everybody's attention. Now we need to talk about what we're going to do. And so they came together and they came up with a plan and everything. And over the years, it's been good and it's bad. We work, myself and another guy, Roger Clay, who works for the Conservation Department, we work out there all the time, trying to teach them the best times of year when they should be dredging and depositing materials and when they should back off and leave it alone. The birds are delisted from the endangered species list, but they're still threatened. So this island went from four pairs to today 5,000 pairs of brown pelicans nested. This is the largest colony of brown pelicans nesting in one site in the entire Gulf of Mexico. This is an interesting thing. There are no brown pelican nests in Mississippi. None. With all the out islands off of Mississippi, Petty Boy, Horn, Ship Island, Cat Island, there's no nests of brown pelicans in Mississippi. Louisiana has lots of brown pelicans, but their colonies are 50 or 100, maybe a couple hundred over here. In the Chandeleurs, there's a colony there, about 300, but this is the largest one. So on any given year, you'll have 5,000 10,000 birds, 5,000 birds on nest. These are adults. You'll also have somewhere around 2,000 to 2,500 subadults. They're first-year birds that are not ready to breed. So they're just hanging. They see all their buddies here, and they're just hanging there waiting for the time that their hormones kick in, and the following year they decide to breed. Now, pelicans are unique in that they are called colonial nesters. Herons and egrets are colonial nesters. And what that means is the older birds, the ones that are mature 3, 4, 5 years down the road from their first egg laying, they're mature birds. They arrive at their nesting site first. And they decide, that's where we're going to build our nest, right there. And so these mature birds select that spot. And as the other birds start to arrive on the island, they select spots around those mature birds. So the colony grows in circles, depending on where you are. But the colony expands outward from the center. Think about this. Think about, why would you ever do something like that? Predation. If you're in the middle and you've got a fox or a raccoon or a coyote on the outside, how's he going to get to you? He's got to go through everybody else before he gets to you. So it's a form of protection for those big, mature, reproductive birds, and the outside are sacrificed. Now, the nice thing is, on this island, there are no raccoons, there are no foxes, absolutely, there's no predators. The only predator that we've seen is a black racer snake. They'll eat an egg, although a brown pelican egg is about that big. So it's got to be a really big snake to try to swallow that. And the other one are fire ants. Fire ants can take a chick, right out of the nest. Next slide, please. So on any given day, this is what the colony looks like. When we go in, obviously we disturb the birds off their nest. They are pretty site specific. So once we do our work in one area, if the nest is like where Mendel is, we move over here, they come right back onto their nest. The minute they have chicks, the minute the eggs hatch, then they're even more specific. They may only move 5 or 6 feet away as you're moving through. The average clutch size is 3, right? 3. So think about this. If you have 5,000 nests with 3 eggs in it, 15,000 chicks have to be fed. Now, they're not all going to survive, but with no predation, they all make it up pretty much to fledgling stage. They'll make it up till they're feathered out. So what's the limiting factor? So why don't we have 30,000 birds nesting there? There's plenty of room. It's not like we're lacking any space for more nests. Limiting factor is called carrying capacity. How much can the bay produce to feed this colony? And you have to imagine, not only are there that many pelicans there, at the same time there's approximately 15,000 laughing gulls there. There's 3,000 herons and egrets nesting there at the same time. All of them are feeding from the same area, this habitat, this water. And so the productivity of the bay, it's not that the bay's polluted, it's not the bay's not producing, it can only produce so much over time. And so what happens is the colony gets limited in size. It's how fast or how far can it grow. We expect this colony, and it started a few years ago. I had a graduate student 2 years ago working, and a subgroup of that colony moved south, moved down here and actually over into Mississippi Sound, and started to establish a secondary colony. They got wiped out by a hurricane, and they haven't come back. But that's what's going to happen in the near future. Somebody asked me earlier on, they said, we've heard or seen that there are a lot of dead pelicans right now. All right, a couple things going on. One, when you have a population that size, you're going to have mortality. I mean, in any population of any animal size, humans as well, there is a percent of the population that doesn't make it. They don't make it for a number of different reasons. Food is one. Right now, this time of year, as that colony, they'll start nesting, start establishing their nests in about 2 weeks. I'm going there next Friday, and I'll fly it first, and I'll go up on it. But they'll start building their nest in about 2 weeks. The limiting factor right now is the bay, the rain, the flood. The bay is fresh water. And all throughout the bay, from the north part of the bay to the south part, it's fresh. Where are the fish that they're going to eat? Well, these are predominantly saltwater species. Although they're brackish, they can handle brackish water. This is fresh water. They move. If you're capable of getting out of fresh water, you're going to move. So they're going to move out to where there's saline water. So that's one of the reasons why we find more of them dying right now. They've gone through a rough winter anyway because of food resources, and now added the flood to it, and even more of them are going to succumb. Next slide. So this is one ugly, ugly chick. Only a mother would love this. Here they are, just coming out of the egg. That's a sibling inside the egg, and that's the beak. And on the very top of the beak is a little crest, a little structure made out of chitin, and it's called the egg tooth. And the chick sits there in the egg when it's time and knocks its beak upward, and knocks a hole through the egg. The adult does not help the chick out of the egg at all. The only thing the adult will do, once the chick is out, they'll pick up the remnants of the shell and throw it out the side of the nest. That's it. But as far as getting out of the nest itself, getting out of the egg itself, it's all up to the chick. Notice, no feathers. No feathers. Well, this will take place, this hatching will take place pretty much in late April, May. Our air temperatures are going up. They nest all the way through July and August, when our air temperatures are in the 90s. So imagine an unfeathered bird in a nest, 90 degree temperatures, humidities 80 plus, and the survival, right? So the female and the male, they switch out when they're going for food. They will come back to the nest, they take their feet, and they shuffle their feet so that their feet are underneath the chick. So the chicks are sitting on top of their feet. And the reason for that is their feet are highly vascularized. They have tons and tons of blood vessels all through their feet. And their feet pull the heat away from the chick, thus giving it a greater survival rate because of that. As they grow older, as they get up, now you can see that the little feather fistules are starting to form, all right? And that's a couple weeks old, and they'll start to get these downy feathers. And the next thing that the chicks will do is they have a flutter. So this time of year you don't see them doing it, but if you come back here in the late spring and summer, you'll see the adults do it. A flutter is when they take their pouch and they flutter their pouch. Everybody's seen a dog pant, right? A dog has no cooling method other than panting. Well, these birds have no cooling method other than panting. It's called gular flux. So they're able to oscillate that. It expands that area, vascularization, air goes by, helps cool them down. Next slide, please. Alright, that's a tern colony. It's right next to them. There's 1,000 terns in that colony, right there. So, as they get older, their feathers are starting to grow out. This is where food resources now become a limiting factor. You got 3 chicks, 3 feathered chicks. They're pretty big, and so the male or female comes back to the nest. Their food is reserved in their gullet, and they come back to the nest, and the strongest chicks in the nest move the adult over one bush or over this way, peck at its bill, whoop, and they regurgitate their food. The one that's the weakest in the nest can't get over there. You know? So it's a slow process of death, but I mean, you can actually, as a scientist, you sit there and watch this happen. That one's starving, and then it's gone. But they actually get up to that feathered out size. Next slide, please. So we've done a lot of work. We did a lot of work right after the oil spill, right after the BP oil spill. Lots and lots of concerns about the pelicans and residual oil in tissue, just like I talked to you about chemicals. Louisiana obviously was impacted the greatest by the oil spill because it was right there, and the winds and currents and the gyres there, we didn't have any major storms to push this stuff around, and so that oil moved into Louisiana marshes, and those birds suffered. They suffered, one, by being coated with oil, and second, they ended up with oil in their systems. So to make sure, Dr. Woodry and I, we did some studies. We took these chicks, that's a chick, believe it or not. We took these chicks and we took blood samples, and then we sent the blood samples off to see if there were hydrocarbons being passed from the adult down to the chicks, and there were not. There were no hydrocarbons, which is good. That colony did not suffer from the impact of oil. Now, I had a graduate student that did some work on pelicans, and we looked at mercury. Mercury's a big topic item. Mercury comes down the river systems, and they tried to panic the public about mercury and food, and testing your hair for, not my hair, but testing your hair for mercury and stuff. In reality, in the world today, there's only been one place that mercury has been detected to cause brain deformities in babies. That was in Minamoto, Japan, because the women that were painting ceramics, the paint had mercury. And as they're painting their ceramics, they would take their paintbrush, they would lick their brush, put it in the paint, and paint. Those women ended up with high concentrations of mercury, which transferred to the fetus. But anywhere else in the world we have not seen. There are entire indigenous populations in the Philippines that eat nothing but tuna. Tuna have high concentrations of mercury, and they don't have any problems. But anyway, my graduate student, we did work on mercury transfer in Mobile Bay, from sediments to clams to bottom-dwelling fish to midwater fish into the pelicans. And what was really interesting, if we got any concentration of mercury at all, the first egg that was laid out of 3 eggs, the first egg laid had the highest concentration of mercury. The other 2 had no mercury. Research, scientific-wise, how does the body physiologically segregate out the mercury into the first egg? I have no clue. I don't have any answer. But we found that to be a very interesting thing. Although the concentrations were low, it still showed up in that first egg and not in the others. Next slide, please. So another thing we wanted to do was, where do they feed? Where do they go? Well, technology today is phenomenal. What we're doing with technology and science is just tremendous, because we use the tools and technology. These are GPS trackers. That's a GPS backpack. And what we did was we snared these birds on the nest. All right? We snared them before they laid eggs. when they were first building their nest and settling down. Not an easy task to snare an adult bird because we have a long tether, and we have a snare, and the bird sits down, puts his feet like this, and you pull the snare, and the bird takes off, and I'm sitting like this. Because the bird's flying, and I've got a hold of him. I got to bring that bird in, hold on. You know, we don't want to hurt them, so hold on to the bird. Well, we did all of that, and put these backpacks on, and we use cloth. We use cloth straps because in 18 months, the cloth rots and the GPS falls off. GPS was good for about 12 months. So that's a way of tracking where the birds go. Next slide, please. Well, this is where they fed. Notice that they didn't go very far. They stayed right around Mobile Bay, up in the Delta, over the Gulf Shores, a little bit down Mississippi Sound, but they all came back to Gilgard after feeding. Except one bird. One bird left Mobile Bay once a week and went to the Chandeleur Islands, stayed a couple days, and went back. We don't know. We think he's a male that had 2 families. we don't know why. Next slide, please. Well, here's a bird that one of our graduate students tagged. We tagged that bird in June, and look, in July, they picked him up with a tracker down in Mexico. So, long distance flight is nothing for these birds, but brown pelicans do not migrate. Now, in this area right now, in the wintertime, we have white pelicans. White pelicans migrate. White pelicans are here right now. If you cross the bridge back and forth, you'll see different little colonies of them. If you go up in a delta, you'll see 200-300 at a time up in the delta. But they're getting ready to leave. What happens, the white pelicans is half again as big as the brown pelican. I mean, they have a huge wingspan. And the top of their bill, right here, as it gets towards this month and the first of next month, there'll be a little notch that starts to form. And it starts as a small triangle, and it grows and grows and grows. And then on the top of it, it'll get to be about that size, a big notch. It's called the breeding notch. Hormones in these birds are starting to flow. Breeding notches form, and then these birds migrate. They migrate to Minnesota, Wisconsin, the Great Salt Lake, Canada, because that's where they breed. The breeding notch is, hey baby, I like your notch. That's exactly what it is. And so they get onto their nesting site. Once they breed, the hormones slow down, the notch falls off, they got a smooth bill again. When they come back to us in the fall of the year, the bill is smooth. So that migration's about to take place in the next month and a half. Boom, off they go. Next slide, please. Oh, that's it. Can you turn the lights on, please? So that's the story about brown pelicans and brown pelicans in our area. We believe that colony, I mean, it's been 5,000 pairs now for the last 5 or 6 years. We go out and count them. We actually have these counters and we walk the colony. Last year we weren't able to count. I had to fly it to get counts. I could not walk because there's an invasive species out there, some plant called Sabina or something like that. But it's a woody vegetation and it grows together like bamboo and it grows 10 feet tall. And so we couldn't walk. There's no place that we could walk on the island and actually see the birds other than from the boat or from an airplane. So that's how we did it. But like I said, the Corps has been working all fall and we'll have easy access now.